Hi, Soul Tribe. Welcome to tonight's show, Awakening Insider. So, this is the second episode that Greg Doyle and Phil Rice and myself have done and got the download from Spirit this week. We were talking about dreams and about astral travel and everything last week, which was super exciting. So, if you missed that episode, definitely go and check it out. There was lots of tips and tools and things that we use personally for astral travel or personally to get messages in dreams. So if you're interested in those topics, I highly recommend going back and watching the previous episode. So we were going to answer, I think it was one final question from that show. There was a question from one of our new viewers. I've forgotten the name. I should have gone back and checked, but she wanted to know about reoccurring dreams. Can we maybe, before we dive into this topic on spirit guides, just get your opinions on, have you guys had reoccurring dreams or have you heard about them? Or we'll start with you, Greg.
Yeah. Look, it is interesting, isn't it? Because that goes in that notion of, are we living in other dimensions at the same time? And I think, I wonder with the reoccurring dreams. I think it's funny because it's kind of segueing into the spirit guide thing. I think there's generally in those dreams, because it's all. I think there's a message. I think if there's a reoccurring dream, I think. There's a message going on. I'll just mention one classic recurring dream I had for years, which people are interested in. It was like these. I would have mentioned it. I mentioned it on a podcast recently to you, Sol, I think. But it was like these UFOs were coming down, and everyone's running in the dreams. Everyone's running away, and it's kind of a feeling you gotta hide. And they're very, it's very clear. You're looking up and you're seeing these, and these are kind of quasi lucid, but falling into a non-lucid state dream, and then. I had these for years, even though consciously I wouldn't run from a UFO, I think. But anyway, in these dreams, you're not necessarily fully conscious. So running away, and then I decided not to run. I thought, well, we don't need to run from these. And then this particular, there was like UFOs above, but a little capsule came down, and there was a couple of aliens in there, like a couple of greys, and I jumped in. And the capsule started going up to the ship. And I said, where are we going? And one of them said, home. And I felt this really good connection. That was the last time I'd had this. And this was one of the longest recurring dreams I've ever had for years and years and years, just popping up for some reason, running with people away from UFOs that were coming down. What it represents in the end, obviously represents something. But all I know is that dream stopped after I didn't run away. So yeah, that's curious. That was a very, very strong one, that reoccurring one.
That's interesting. And I can see Phil's a little bit frozen, so I'll just jump in quickly to a reoccurring one that I had. So I think we spoke about briefly on the show last week. I used to have vampire dreams, and they were always when I was in a period of, oh, you're back, Phil. They were in a period of like high stress. But as soon as I realized within the dream, the message, because if we look at it from our subconscious mind, which is more awake and more sort of trying to give us messages when we are in that dream realm or the sleeping, the subconscious message coming was that I'm always protected, that I always have this, I guess, sovereignty. And that was the main extraction that I took from these vampire dreams, was that they couldn't actually essentially touch me unless I gave them permission. But I had, I would say, guardian angels, guides also protecting me. So that was sort of, I guess, my experience of a reoccurring dream. So usually there's something to learn from it. I do have a friend who had a dream that went over 20 years reoccurring, and she would dream that there was this man's face right in front of her. And she, as a college student, went on a tour in Egypt, and they were doing photography. One night, something in her intuition just said, get up, get out of bed, switch on the light. When she did, she saw this man's face that she'd seen in the dream for 20 years prior. So that message in the dream was trying to warn her for when the situation happens, I guess, to run or scream or do whatever she could. And so what happened was she ended up screaming. The light was switched on. Her, I guess, apartment mate at the time, they both got out of that situation, luckily. But if she hadn't have paid attention to her intuition, or she hadn't have recognized, I guess, that face in the dream, she wouldn't have connected the dots with everything. So sometimes they are, connected to premonitions. And I know there's a few of us that have had dreams like you're talking about with UFOs, and, whether they're landing or making mass contact. A lot of us have had those mass contact ones in this community here, because I know a few people personally. So thank you for sharing that one. And Phil, if we can, hopefully your internet's working. Have you had some experiences yourself with reoccurring dreams?
Hey, thank you. Yeah, very interesting stories, guys. Thank you. So for myself, I've found it quite curious that I haven't actually had recurring dreams, because I know lots of people that have. However, now you could actually slightly tweak the question and say, or the sometimes it might not be a recurring dream, and the setting and the characters and what plays out is, near identical or recurring. Sometimes it's a theme that recurs, and I have certainly had recurring themes. And so what I find is that, especially when I'm in the middle of doing a lot of dream work, let's say I'm meditating on a tarot card to impregnate a dream, that I wish to have a dream, because the tarot card presents a set of parameters for the dream poet to craft me something. I've got a character in the card, I've got an event, a situation playing out, and there's an inference of what that card represents, and that helps give the dream poet a certain set of paints and brushes to use. It's like having a agreement. Okay, give me something about this. Now, when I'm doing this, I will sometimes have 3 or 4 dreams over the period of several nights that all refer back to that. But if, for example, if I'm not doing that, like impregnating my dream or incubating a dream, sometimes I will have a theme play out regularly. And for me, sometimes it's, there's like something that I'm not dealing with. So it's more of the underlying subtext of the dream rather than a recurring sort of repeated identical situation. So that's kind of what I've got to share on that. But yeah, I think like Greg says, and yourself, when the same thing keeps knocking on the door, it's like there's something really important, and that's why we continue to drill down on the same message. That's my sort of only real interpretation of that scenario, because I haven't had the personal experience. Sorry.
No, that's interesting. And it's so true what you're saying about, whether it's impregnating into an intention or a message to receive in a dream, definitely paying attention to synchronicities, because that's what we're going to get into tonight with spirit guides and things like that. They tend to give you messages that are synchronistic, or you'll get symbols and things that all kind of fit together. And I see Gisela and Jake have also had experiences with parallel lifetime dreams or reoccurring dreams as well. So Jake's saying, fascinating. I had a client who had many reoccurring dreams, and he found out in a session that they were indeed parallel lives. So that's interesting. And if you didn't catch our show last week, we did go into parallel lives being connected with dreams, which was a fascinating topic. And I just want to drop into the chat. This is such a beautiful resource that Greg's put together, with your book, Greg, your courses and things that you teach on astral travel, for anyone wanting to dive into the subject and really immerse themselves in the world of astral travel, lucid dreaming, and just to become more knowledgeable on the subject. Definitely check out Greg's website. We've also dropped it into the chat as well, so you'll be able to get the link. You'll see that in the chat and just up on the screen, unfortunately blocking Greg's face at the moment. And I just want to mention, we also have Phil, your Substack, which I know you've been working so hard at producing new blogs, so much detailed information. I know that you work hard day and night to really put as much into it as you can. And you also both have your bookings available on your website too. And I just want to quickly flick up. We've got Soul Alchemy Potions, and we will have the new moon activation that's going to come up shortly. We're going to be working with some really interesting things for this upcoming new moon. And you can now purchase the potions as one bundle. And I also have the Learn How to Read Auras course. So this will help with your psychic sensitivity and making you, I guess, more attuned to the other world. So let's step into our subject around spirit guides. And here's just an example of, this is something I wanted to put all my spirit guides together on a piece of paper, probably like 10 or so years ago, and just have this on my wall as a reminder to make connection with them. So things like this can be really useful. I've got a few others here. This is an aura drawing with spirit guides that you see that I drew for a client, because you can actually see other people's spirit guides too. That's always fascinating. This was actually an acupuncturist was working on me, and I saw this beautiful Koshan, beautiful being standing, working with her, and even felt his hands working through her hands. So guides can step in where we can actually feel them, whether it's on sort of like more of a pranic level or energy level. They can actually work with your acupuncture and with Reiki energy. And you guys are very proficient with your Reiki too. So I'm sure you've had some pretty cool experiences that if you want to talk about tonight, we can talk about that too. But just to bring back up our little screen. So with the spirit guide side of things, I'll first give like a little bit of a brief introduction, and then we'll step into like your experiences. So this book, Opening the Channels, one that I got in college. We had an amazing Theosophical Society bookshop, the TS bookshop, that was with probably like a running distance on a lunch break to college to get to this shop, have a quick look around, soak in the magic before we
I've
had
got
to
it.
get back.
Okay.
You got this one? Yeah, it's a good one, isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah. So with this one, there's a
Great.
little section. If we have time, we might read just a little bit at the end that gives a brief overview on how people can connect. And I've also just written a couple of little notes too. So I guess with wanting to connect with guides, it's more about like our intention, and it's more about, that desire, that being in the space of the heart, having gratitude, sending love to your guides as well, but also putting out to only connect with those that have our best and highest good at heart. So for me, it's also about making time to connect, because we spend so much time on social media, so much time immersed in the 3D physical sense world. It really is important to quieten the mind, to step into meditation. I definitely find putting my hands on my heart helps to activate that energy center. Yeah, how about you guys? How is it that you like to connect? And we'll get into how we can hear and see and feel as well. So feel free to go deep in your experience.
Yeah, I was cool.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, look, I'll
jump
start.
in. And
So no, Phil, please.
oh, sweet. Yeah, that's the lag. No, that's cool. So from the point of view of experience, not speaking from an intellectual basis of my readership and such, from personal experience, especially when I first started having some pretty intense experiences after I began meditating back at the end of 2014, I had a lot of doors kicked open, and I had to manage the influx of information that was coming in, because there was a lot coming in. It was like I was kind of like the new kid on the block, and suddenly all of these I had all these new friends, and they all wanted to talk, and and the information is not. It's not always literal. You're not always hearing something spoken. Sometimes it's a felt sensation or an inference, like like you get a gut feeling, or but there is a lot of quite what I would say audible information that comes through. That's sometimes tight packet, and sometimes it's like a phrase as such. But in the early days, it was quite overwhelming, because I honestly felt like there was a group of these characters all vying for my attention. It was very hard to sort of manage, I guess it's like having a bunch of kids around, all trying to, they're all pulling on your t-shirt, wanting your attention, and that. And it was kind of fun. But I think as I sort of sat down and carried on meditation and became more quiet, I was able to separate them, because a lot of them, like, they were overlapping. And so the more I just sat there and just watched and listened, because some people having this experience might start thinking they're gone a bit nutty, but here's me having these experiences, and I'm just sitting there and paying attention. And once I was able to sort of like focus in on each one, and there's only a handful. Then I started to engage the experience, and I would go on you might call it a memory palace or a mental wandering adventure. And I remember this one, and I'll just tell you what it is. It's kind of cool actually, because I kind of got given the okay to talk about some of these things. As a practicing hermeticist, we have a pretty tight rule of silence that we maintain. But I'm gonna share this. So I'm in this field, and it's pretty amazing. I'm in this field, and I'm like, wow, this is pretty amazing, and I'm walking through it, and I can kind of feel the grass, and I'm just lying on my bed, just doing a meditation, and I'm like, I want to meet some of these impressions that I'm getting, whether it's a being or just a discarnate voice or whatever. I just want to follow this with my mind, and so I can put myself into the position to sort of have like a quite vivid interaction. And so I'm walking through this field, and I'm just letting the visual experience unfold. And what I found was that there was a giant tree there, and it was like I don't know whether it was like autumn or spring, but it was just beautiful. This huge tree. It was like one of those huge willow trees, but it wasn't anyway. And I get under this tree. There's this. It's a female cat being, and I'm having this pretty. And she's very kind, and she's like, "Bro, you need to sit down for a bit." And so I ended up just sort of hanging out with this cat being, and this is me going on a mental excursion. So I'm not having this in real time, like touching the person, but it's in my spirit, in my mind, in my mental body, I call it that. And I'm having this very, very tangible experience. And what I found is that she kind of said to me, look, there's actually a group, and you can, through this method that you've kind of figured out yourself, you can go off and meet the rest of this group, and they will sort of introduce themselves, over time. And so I went through a period of exploring this, and it helped me make sense of how to make sense of things. Because, when you open up the door and all the new information comes through, it could, because some people could drive them, not in a healthy direction. But I took the approach of just paying attention to it, bringing on a mental traveling gimmick of a sorts, where I'm visualizing, and then I go into that environment, and then the environment starts piecing itself together, and then the being forms. There she is. She's beautiful. She's very caring, and it was a most welcome experience, I have to say, because I've had experiences since then that weren't so nice. So, hermetic point of view, we are assigned a guardian, and a part of the journey is to make contact with that guardian. That guardian probably might be considered to be more like our holy guardian angel or our higher self. But there is a hierarchy, and this, like I said, from a hermetic point of view, we work our way up towards that, and we do have companions and helpers along the way. And so that was one experience that I've had, but I don't want to hold the show up here. I'm sure everyone else has got some stuff to share, but I found it valuable.
Well, thanks, Phil. And we're having a bit of a problem with your internet too. It's sort of cutting in and out, unfortunately. But I do understand what you're saying about, like, from a hermetic point of view, making contact with, I think in Theosophy as well, they call it the golden solar angel, which is meant to be connected to your higher self or to an angel that sort of resides over you. Greg, did you want to tell us about your experience with spirit guides, or if there's anything that you like to do to help enhance that connection?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like how to connect, you're saying before, like it's it is to get back. It's kind of to get back into a kind of a frequency that I think it's. Look, it's always easier if you've had these experiences, and I would have spoken to both of you about the experience I've had with some of my guides when, like, early on in the astral, my astral experiences when I was going out of body a lot. And I remember the spirit guide chapter came when I kind of put my foot down to the universe and said, look, give me something I can hold on to, rather than, there were lots of alien things, lots of past life stuff. And I remember being quite, adamant that I wanted, and I was looking for an experience that I could hold on to. And that was when the spirit guides rocked up and kept taking me back to a place. And I thought it was interesting because, coming from an analytical background with my music to a certain extent, I kind of needed that to kind of knock me out of the normal 3D field. And so it was a guy and a woman, and they've been around a fair bit. But anyway, but what was interesting was that they took me back repeatedly that night, out of body, and like really, that like I couldn't escape them, and that was really cool. And I remember this particular woman, who was an ex-human actually, and she was showing me all of these beautiful things about auras and things which I hadn't really, they weren't part of my life. And she kind of really began that whole journey into venturing into the whole chakra thing, into healing. So it was really from spirit that I got that impetus to move. But one thing, I loved your drawing, Sol. I love those drawings, and they kind of really touched me before those drawings you had of your guides, because it makes me think I don't really draw, but I should, because I like that. And some of those beings, like sometimes, not that long ago, like sometimes I had these very tall alien kind of bluish purplish beings who are really beautiful. Sometimes some kind of space cadet ones, all different kinds of guys. But getting back to your original question, connecting, like also sometimes just lights, like it can be, one thing I've had for years is this blue light that just sometimes it just flashes. And to me, often it'll flash on someone when they're saying something, or it'll flash over a part of their body. So it tends to, I've translated the significance over years. Generally, when something that is said that is important, it flashes, or if it's over that particular part of the body of a person coming for healing, then the guide is showing me where the healing maybe needs to be focused. So, and it's like a blue, really bright blue, translucent flash. So that's also, guidance can come in so many different ways, can't it? Have either of you had the flash thing?
Yeah, definitely. I started seeing it. Oh, and Phil, your internet's so much better.
Much better.
And Jake,
I can see you, Phil.
Crystal clear, Phil. And maybe it's all the energy coming together too. I did actually bring. Look at this, guys. Look at the baby I brought with me today.
Oh my gosh!
Whoa!
Look, it's bigger than my head. So my partner is
beautiful.
Oh my
so
God. Are you going to fit that in your purse?
Yeah. This is what you have to get to
around your neck.
Put
around your neck.
Just
You're going to have to take it for a walk.
On that subject, Sol, there's a beautiful, I'm really looking for a large, those a beautiful rose quartz, a tall tower. And I saw one
like a geode
in Mullumbimby recently. Yeah, I'm really looking for one of those tall. Yeah, anyway, but beautiful. It's beautiful crystal.
Oh, I love Mullumbimby, and I can't wait to get up there. That's my dream for this year, to get back up that way, come visit you as well. But with that crystal, the reason I put it here.
The flash.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks for reminding me. With the flashes, I saw them appear. I'd seen them throughout my life, but it was consistently appearing more and more in March. It started in 2020 and leading up to the Uluru activation that happened around solstice of 2020. So I kept seeing it when people were speaking in unison with their heart, or they were sort of, I guess, stepping in, expressing themselves from that way. I would see these beautiful little blue orbs, and they would start to get bigger the more someone was in their heart. And I saw it a lot of the time when I was walking out in nature. And I love Jake's comment. He's saying that I could do a bicep curl with this. Do you know what? It is so heavy. I don't know if I could hold it with one hand to do a bicep curl. But yeah, it's a whopper. So yeah, with the blue flashes, I also tend to see people that see them are more likely to be part of blue soul group. So this usually encompasses Pleiadians, Syrian, Lyrans, inner earth beings, and Elvish realms. So when we've had lifetimes in 3 or more of these places, we tend to be part of blue soul group. So blue soul groups, kind of the midwife or the people that are helping birth this new awakening that we're having on the earth plane and with humanity. They're also doing it off-world too. So it makes sense to me why you and I have known each other for so long, Greg, and we both see the blue, I call it blue flame energy. It's almost like the iridescent sort of blue that you get, or the galactic blue at the base of the flame. It's so beautiful. What's interesting is we don't usually live close to other blue flame people. So we're generally scattered or put in different parts of the world. So it's interesting, you and I lived in the same city for a couple of years and then, dissipated into other parts of the world. But what I'd like to mention with the spirit guide side of things, speaking of crystals, is there's certain crystals, this one in particular, let me just bring this up on a big window. So this one you can see has, let me just count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sides to this face. So these are what's called a channeler crystal. Now, if you're wanting to enhance your connection to work with spirit guides, definitely these will help assist. And what you feel when you plug in and you connect with the crystal is just like a divine light, quite often white or gold or even sometimes soft pink. But you'll feel that you're connected or you're opening an actual channel to receive a message. And I think, Phil, we might not have heard your experience. I'm just trying to remember the question that I asked. I think it was around experience with guides. Oh, if there's tips and tools that anyone else can use also to connect with guides.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add something too, because, that blue orb is a regular occurrence in my life and has been for a while. And, when I have people on the table, there's a variety of colored indicators that I get presented with. And, but the blue orb's quite fascinating because that's a regular show. And it's quite, I haven't sort of determined yet. I'm open to understanding what it is, but there's a presence there. It's lovely. It's got a kind of a warm reassurance about it, and so that's pretty cool. But as far as tips and tricks go, as far as like if you're wanting to receive information, it's good to put a question out so that you're giving the entity or the being or the guide, something like, if they feel that there is something important to share, it can be quite challenging sometimes to get things down to the physical. And so, how can you meet the information halfway, right? And so one of those things is stillness, becoming very, very, very still. I've got to say, one of my favorite audio meditations is listening to pink noise. It sounds like a waterfall, and it's quite loud, but once you let that loudness sort of subside and you're there, it sort of fills in all the gaps, and you find that you can become quite still with this noise going on. That's quite good. But nowadays, I mean, back in the day, I would sit with a question and I would just focus on the question, and I would normally get some kind of insight or impression come through. I can't always say it was like I'm always hearing it. It's seldom that I would hear it in a voice outside of my own. I find nowadays that when beings come out, they generally reflect off my inner capacities and my inner mannerisms and things like that. But getting very quiet and clearing the environment as well. Like burn some sage. Don't do that during. Do it before, and probably give it plenty of time to air out, because that can get quite sticky and smelly, that stuff. But that will generally get rid of anything that might challenge them. One thing you like in Hermetics, we set up an environment conducive for visitation, if you will, or not visitation so much, because we do, I don't personally engage in spirit magic. I do my sessions, and I call on help if I get the nudge to. But setting up an environment that's kind of like I said, it's going to be something that's easy for them to come into. If you've got like wrathful deities hanging from the walls, like hardcore, protecting deities and things like that, then they might be like, this is a bit full on, bro. So but yeah, I'd have to say that, like, if you can find a quiet spot in nature, that can fuel the likelihood of an experience too. Having all that abundant life force around can help to sort of bridge the any kind of information barrier passing from one phase into the next. So yeah, sorry guys, I haven't got too much on that one, but I just like getting still, and when like I said, and just painting a question and getting quite specific about it, and then focusing on it, like charging it with mental energy, if you will, and then just relaxing into a blank mind, or just build the tension, wrap that question in some tension so that it densifies it and makes it palpable, and then like focus, maybe a couple of minutes, and then just release, relax, or sung, as they say in Tai Chi, just and let it go, and just sit in that space, and you'll find that something will emerge, bubble up, come in, and then of course you begin your information vetting process, because there's some tricky ones out there too.
Yeah. And I think if we strip it back to, because I guess a lot of people, when they're connecting with guides for the first time too, might be sitting in a place of doubt, or am I making this up? Is this my conscious mind or my mental thought? What you'll feel is there's a distinctly different energy that will step in around it. So sometimes you'll feel the density of the air change. You might feel sort of like more of a heart type space, or a light kind of etheric energy start to touch in your aura. So just getting to know what your energy feels like in general, and then you're more easily able to distinguish between when something else is entering your energy space. I think that's a really good tip. And also your spirit guides, it's not that they just communicate to you when you're sitting down or, holding a giant crystal and making that connection. It's, sometimes it's when you're driving, it's the number synchronicities, it's the 333s, it's the 999s, 777s, the white feathers, or it's the message that you'll sometimes get a song, because they also work through our senses. So you might get it auditory, you might get it visually. So just pay attention to the extension of your physical senses. The other thing too is animals and children can also work as conduits, because they are so pure and they're so tapped into the spiritual realms. Guides can sometimes bring messages through. And I had this with my daughter when she was maybe she's 24 now, but when she was about 18 months, there was a symbol I kept reoccurring and seeing not only in visions, but in nature. And it was a triangle with circles on each end. And Spirit kept saying to me, the gateway. So this wasn't even something I talked about with my daughter. Funnily enough, her pair of shoes even had the symbol, just weirdly, as the sole imprint on the foot for the grip, for like the little toddler shoes. But I remember one day we were in nature, and there was sticks and little gum nuts that had fallen into the triangle pattern with the little gum nut on each corner. And I just thought, I'll just say to her, oh, what do you think that is? She turned, looked at me and said, it's the gateway, and then giggled and looked away and went back to being a child. So it was like she just tapped into, whether it's, her guide or higher self, and just channeled that information through. So, we need to pay attention to the environment around us, to those that are plugged in and sensitive, because messages from the guides can also come through that way. I just want to highlight Jake's comment as well, talking about how, because he works with QHHT, and how clients, sometimes their voices will change. Is that something that you've experienced, Greg, working with clients? Have you noticed that, whether it's during the astral travel workshops or teachings, or your one-on-one sessions, or even in Reiki? Have you noticed anyone communicating messages to you and their voice changing?
It's an interesting point, isn't it? Generally, when they're having Reiki, of course, they're kind of out of it. so they're not actually speaking. But like one classic case years ago was this girl who came on. She was quite young, in her early 20s, and she been diagnosed with depression, and she really didn't want to take antidepressants. So she decided to really hit the Reiki. Like she came literally, I think it was twice a week for a few months. This was early on in my Reiki career, about 20 years ago, actually. So it was kind of a good test case for me as well. But whenever I started to give her Reiki, after a while, she just drop out, because Reiki's like that. When people go for a while, they tend to immediately kind of fall into that kind of Reiki vibe. And these, I don't know if I've spoken to you about this, but either of you, but so her eyes, she was asleep. She was out of it, but her eyes would open and watch me around the table. And they were kind of, they weren't her eyes. They weren't her eyes. So these eyes would watch me, and they were kind of a darkish kind of eye. And I'd say to her later, were you aware that your eyes were open and you were watching me move around the table? And she said, no.
Wow.
And then eventually she started to have these dreams again. They were very clear dreams of some kind of trauma that happened. It was in the family. Anyway, her eye, every time she came for Reiki, her eyes would follow me. And then eventually, when she kind of spoke to her family about this situation that had happened, it was a deep-seated trauma. Then the eyes stopped. So it was literally like a little bit different to what you're saying, but it was like there was an entity or part of that subconscious trauma that hadn't been expressed knew that its days were numbered. And this is a little bit different, but it was like, to me, it was a little bit like, because I knew that particular being, a part of her, but also not a part of her, after a while was kind of, once it had been seen, it was kind of, it was Gonski kind of thing. But that's a little bit different what you're saying. I think in terms of channeling, for what I see when I do Reiki, it's more, sometimes I'll see people as their past life. So that their aspect, like say it's an alien, like one classic case with this woman who came, she had issues with emotions. And every time I closed my eyes and give a Reiki, I saw this really long alien with this bulbous head. It was a kind of a feminine, but very interesting. And I thought, well, this is a bit weird, and I'm not sure if I can really trust. And I didn't need to say to the client, I remember that was also early on, I didn't need to really tell her, I didn't want to freak this client out. But what was interesting was the alien was telling me, I've come here to experience human emotion and what that's all about. The woman, the human on the table, she had real issues with emotions and expressing them and all that. So rather than her telling me, okay, this is all past life stuff I'm bringing in, it made sense to me that this alien was kind of telling me. So it was like the past life of that person. So often I'll see visions and get very clear messages, often from what I take it to be aspects of the past, concurrent, whatever you want to call it. So it comes through in that way. So they'll talk to me, but not actually through the client that way. But generally, so now as a result of these things happening, I'll generally, I'll always have my higher self and the higher self of the client having a conversation during Reiki to find out. That way I don't have to get involved. And generally there's often very clear messages coming through. Look, I perceive it as the higher self, but I call through the guides and the higher self of every client. And I always call my guides, and because as Phil alluded to earlier, we have guides for different reasons. So these are my Reiki guides coming through. But it is curious the way we can all work with them in all different ways. And astrally, often my higher self, in the astral is very easy because you hear their voices, and I've often heard my higher self, and generally it's a prelude to a full-on astral experience. So it's the same voices. I call it my higher self because it's the same voice as me coming through my crown. And he seems to be able to pull me into a full-on astral experience. So, and even when you fly in the astral, there's beings who fly you, I found. If anyone's flying, anyone who's listening is having an astral experience. And if you check your ankles, you'll find you're actually being flown by a being. So everything is guided. I think that gives you confidence. I think you could say then, what is the human experience? But I think, there's so much to it, isn't there? There's so many aspects and so many ways of connecting. And that's what I love about Reiki too, is that kind of, particularly with clients who you have no idea of, you don't know their backstory, and you start to trust what their higher self is telling you, or my interpretation of the higher self. It could be just their guidance, but I imagine their higher self. So
yeah. Oh, that was so interesting hearing about the story, especially the one with the girl and the eyes watching you, but she wasn't aware of it.
Yeah.
I've seen similar, and I've seen where someone's hopped off a healing table with a practitioner working, and there was this. It was interesting. This person had possession things going on and really erratic behavior and voices in their head, and a lot of mental health aspects. And it's sad because it does affect children even. And so this particular child had this situation where they hopped off the healing table after some healing work and some kinesiology. I was just in the room witnessing the practitioner work with them. They hopped off the table and sort of went like this, a bit discombobulated. And then all of a sudden you saw them sort of shake and the entity go back in them. So I think the person also has to have a commitment to, to keeping their field clear and to working out. And usually these things will cling on from trauma. Sometimes you'll have where there's soul contracts, or they'll interface in for a particular reason to do with past lives and things. But it's interesting. I have seen with this particular person, their eyes will fully roll black as well, especially if there's sort of like a bit of a sinister nature. And I've seen this with other people. And I saw Gisela said, let me just pop this up. So Shivers, lol, my ex's eyes actually went to slit. He had no idea. Certainly freaked me out. I have seen and witnessed the same thing on a few occasions. And usually the person doesn't realize that that's happening. And we can see sometimes people's, I guess, ET backgrounds or different heritages. Sometimes you'll have parasitic things, archon energies that will interface or link in or try and hijack the person. And yeah, a lot of the time we do see, unfortunately, that it's also linked to mental health. I also just want to put out we will be doing a few more shows around the mental health aspect. My friend Allison's interviewed Jerry Mazinski, and you guys, if you just type in Jerry Mazinski, you'll see he is a psychologist that has done a lot of work connecting the dots over, I think it's 30 years of work with all of the people that have experienced schizophrenia, psychosis, and other things in mental wards and the prisons he's worked in. There's always been an entity element that's come in behind it. Once they've dealt with the entity, usually the mental health stuff also clears up and the depression goes away. Hey, Lisa, lovely to see you here, beautiful. Phil, what about you? Have you had experiences similar to like what Greg's talking about?
Well, we could easily do a whole stack of shows on tales from the healing table, man, because, I'm sure Greg knows too, and you've just shared some too, right? But, as far as, I guess, experiences with clients goes, there's often been, you can feel that there's another presence in the room. Okay. Especially once you start doing a lot of Qigong work, where you start to you're able to put your awareness outside your body and you feel things. If there was a butterfly in the room flapping its wing, you'd be able to feel the air pressure over here, sort of thing. It's quite an interesting sort of skill to develop. But, when I didn't really get that until I started doing lots of Qigong practice. But, when prior to that, when I'm just working on the table, just exploring the phenomena of energy healing, and just everyone was different and continues to be. It's not one of these sort of same different day kind of jobs, there's always something new and interesting. I'm sure Greg can attest to that. And sometimes it's not so much, but anyway, probably as in relation to spirit guides, I'll hear little things, but as far as, I guess quirky behavior from clients goes, probably energetic experiences. So this, like, you know, they'll feel like a flood or a stream coming in or through them or out of them. But yeah, I mean, people who have had emotional issues, and even if they haven't said it, I can usually tell, because they seem to have, you know, there's some physical kind of response to it. Like one lady had a real problem with sort of intimacy with people. She didn't like men for some reason. She felt really uncomfortable with men, and so it was a big thing for her to come to me. And you know, we're in the room, and you know, she came to me because, you know, I guess maybe I'm a nice guy or something like that, right? Okay, yeah. But she's on the table, and she, you know, and she's having this bolt upright, highly emotional experience. And I'm kind of just looking around the room going, was that, what, is there something else going on here? I didn't feel it. So it's not in relation to spirit guides, but as far as strange, well, interesting sort of things at the thing, I'm not sure I've seen a client like, and simultaneously a client have a reaction, and there's also sort of some help in the room at the same time. So don't have much on that one, but yeah, definitely lots of interesting occurrences over the years, which I have a swag of them, which I can share probably a good 40 to 50% of them. So if we do another show, I can certainly go into some details about that.
And I can see Jake saying would love that series. So I think that would be interesting, and it'd be just great as practitioners too, all working with healing, that, you know, to share different stories and of course keep it anonymous. And because it's, you know, it's really good for human learning. We do have a few questions and things. And I just want to set up the preface of how important it is to do clearing. So dragon's blood being one of the highest things that we can use for clearing energy. That is a really good one. Also black salt, known as witch's salt, really good to have like a circle of protection, or to put it over the thresholds of your doorways as well. So yeah, that is a good thing with any of this kind of work, and anything that just feels like it's not aligned to your best and highest good, or coming from an unconditional love space, you actually have authority to command it to go away. So I usually will set up like a tunnel or a portal of light out the front of my place, and I'll send them into that if anything comes around. But when you've been working with it for so long, usually you'll have a pretty strict boundary up for darker stuff not being allowed to go in, unless you're kind of running yourself ragged, or you're getting tired. When your energy's a little bit weaker will be when they try and come in. So definitely make sure to do your pre-clears, to do your connection, or if you've got any little prayers or things like that to say. And we are sort of coming to the top of the hour, so I'll just recap. So if we were to put it into like a 5-step process, number 1 would be prepare with meditation, set your intention. 2, relax and let go. Focus on your guide's energy and on your own energy and connection. Number 3 would be listen and to receive guidance with an open mind, and to remember that it's not all just about like how we receive messages from an auditory level. Some of us are quite visual, like myself and Lisa, who's in the audience, will receive, you know, clairvoyant visions, will see and sort of sense and feel things too. So just be aware that it can come through. And I saw Gisela saying that she was using writing. So you can also channel through automatic writing to receive and connect with messages with your guides or loved ones that have passed, or angels. Trust the guidance, that's number 4, and let go of doubt. 5 would be to integrate the guidance into your life with action. So if there's, you know, suggestions and things, they're called a guide for a reason. So there's a lot of funny memes that we see where it's, you know, the guide sitting there like this, or the angel sitting like this, watching us have our human experience. And, you know, the whole reason of why we have guides is to actually guide and help and assist us while we're down here in the earth realm and on this mission. So you'll know that you're connecting with your guides when you feel that space of calm. You might feel like a tingling kind of energy, or like a Reiki energy come in. They'll feel a sense of clarity or inner knowing. So definitely trusting your intuition, paying attention to the symbols and things, or synchronicities like we talked about, and your guides will communicate in a way that resonates for you as well. And if something doesn't feel like it's coming through with love, just remember to send it on its way. Did you guys have any tips that you feel are really valuable that we could add to that or to build upon the experience?
No, I love
Yeah,
what you said there, Sol. I think, and so I thought I'd jump in there, Phil. But yeah, as you say, like that Reiki vibe is true. I found it. I've had situations where you could think that externally something maybe not so good has happened, but I felt this incredible feeling of love, or like a Reiki pour down me, and I know that is the right thing. So often guidance. Yeah, absolutely. So to know that you can tune in, for me, the visceral feelings of things are very strong. Like a little while ago, I couldn't take any electronics. So for a whole week, I couldn't look at a screen. This was last year. Or I couldn't have a Wi-Fi or a Bluetooth speaker. So for a whole week, I just had to cancel all appointments because I felt literally physically ill. And so when I came back to, like, right now I'm in front of a computer, I just realized, okay, that week of extreme guidance was telling me sometimes be wary, sometimes, like, it just showed me the extreme, but I now know to be more vigilant. So we've got to look in all different ways, and I think you covered that really well.
Oh, good. I just wanted to put it together in sort of point form because I just thought, it's hard sometimes when we're trying to conceptualize it because we know what we're doing and we don't even think about it anymore. I know for me, when I'm connecting with spirit, I'm looking at someone's aura and the messages are just coming in automatically. It really is about getting yourself into that conducive space. And sometimes it's just shuffling the tarot cards and it's like you're in sync. So whatever makes you guys feel in sync with your spirit, make you feel harmonious. How about you, Phil?
Yeah. So, if I want to attract something of a high quality nature, then I've got to be essentially a tuning fork for that so that I attract like. And so, a great way to do this, if, and they're free to access. Okay. Here's a little exercise for you guys. Jump on, find a translation of the Reiki precepts, sit with each precept. Do not anger, do not worry, be grateful, be honest in your work or true to yourself, and be kind to yourself and others. Loop yourself through that, sitting on each one, and just breathe that in and just, contemplate each one and just release anything and just relax. And what that's going to do is it's just going to quieten down the noise. The noise can be what attracts, things of that vibe. Like if you're low vibing, right, you're probably that's a kind of food source for certain types, and those aren't necessarily the ones you want. So what I do is that if I'm wanting to go into a deep sort of like information exchange experience, I'll go and have a shower and I'll use water element to clean myself, and I'll bless it, and then I'll have a glass of water and bless that too. But I'd get myself into a really good state of mind just to get that. And that way, if you're tired and frustrated or angry, that's not a good space to be in if you're wanting to connect. It's like, I know sometimes you're on the battlefield and you need some help quick. Coming up with a quick protocol, if you will, to get you into a nice, relaxed, harmonious state. Those Reiki precepts, man, I tell you what, they're an absolute gold mine, and there's ways of extrapolating greater value from them. We don't really have the time to go into it today, but essentially you can do a quick run through by moving into your astral body and reconditioning that so that it just chills it out or harmonizes it, and that way you're going to get a cleaner signal with conversations that you want to have, rather than, is anyone there? Do you know what I mean? Like, and then just some random shows up.
Yeah, that's a really, really great tip, Phil. And I think we can expand that and put that into a show. That'd be so much fun to talk about, like clearing of the energy bodies. I've got, Jake's got a question here as well. So have you had many different guides or worked with just a few. Just curious how many we've done or how many you generally work with. So for me, it's always working with higher self first. I'm working with universe, working with God, working with source, I would say is sort of like my top go-to. And even when I'm doing my readings, I'm always connected with my higher self. And when I'm doing light language, it's a higher version of me stepping in and coming through into this physical 3D. I feel more at home speaking that. I'm more at home in connection in that way. I guess working with the non-human or like a higher spiritual form of language. But generally what I see with clients is they'll have particular guides that work for different things. So you have guides that are there for relationship purposes or karmic or soul lessons. There's some that are there for your career or for your work, or some that are working with you, as Greg was saying, for Reiki, that you have your guides that you connect with to work in that way. Generally, I sort of see about 12, and you'll see them step in and out of your life depending on what stage you're at. Some will be there from before you came into this physical earth reality. And then you'll see sometimes that it'll be time to move on. But usually you've known your guides before you've had this lifetime, and you're usually part of the same. If we look at it as little pearls in a necklace, you're part of those pearls that are on that one string. So sometimes you're helping assist them, or even in other dimensions, you're assisting them. Did you guys want to answer this question just before we have to go?
Yeah, I'll jump in quick and say,
Yeah. I'll look just also jump in, Phil.
Sorry, guys, we're on delay just with the internet today.
It's great. It's great. Yeah. So, generally speaking nowadays, I'm just, I'm connecting with the highest always, and there's another, but it's something that needs a bit more elaboration, but we essentially, we can also connect with non-dual beings, because some people, you're not supposed to heal them. And if you do something that goes against their karmic pattern, so to speak, you can unnecessarily disadvantage yourself. And so, but if you're calling on these beings that are much higher for help, they're not involved in duality. And so generally speaking, like I'll just aim for the highest. But as far as every day-to-day things go, being a hermeticist, we have a series of practices to help us connect with the high, we're just after the highest quality signal all day, every day, no compromise, because when you get to the point of like, oh man, I've got maybe 40 years left, I want to do right by that. I only want clean signal, man. Otherwise, I'm kind of wasting time. So hopefully that answers that question there.
That's a great answer, and in alignment with what Jake's saying too. So yes, Phil, that's why I always work with higher self and healing to make sure that it's for the best and highest good. So yeah, it sounds like we're all on the same sort of path with that. And I can see Lisa loving that too. How about you, Greg?
Yeah, look, one thing you mentioned before about that notion of whether you've known them in a past life, or I remember this one particular female guide who early on was one of my very active guides in the Astral, as in teaching me stuff. So she would so she'd be talking to me in the Astral, and I'd deliberately wake up to see if I could continue to hear her voice while I was fully conscious 3D. So generally the voice would speed up. So that was when I learned that there's no time in the Astral. But she was teaching me all sorts of techniques, particularly Astral ones, like connecting, focusing on frequencies above the head and going for the highest frequency and allowing that to widen out, and you can go Astral from there. So creating portals above you. But she, much like there was a psychotherapist in Austria before I started going Astral. She became a friend, the psychotherapist, and this lovely kind of woman who I kind of felt I'd known her before, and she was like a very powerful. Like that was the first time I'd ever gone to therapy. This was in my 20s. Anyway, when I started going Astral, one of this particular woman who was an ex-human who seemed to be aging in human years in the Astral, because I saw her many times, she looked very much, had the same kind of energy as that psychotherapist who I knew earlier. Same kind of energy. Interesting, I thought. And the other one thing with guides, and also with Reiki, I'll just go to the highest thing. But when my mum died about, how many years ago? 5 years ago. Anyway, that was really curious because she actually joined my force, or my battery of guides, which I didn't expect to happen. Right, just before she died, I was in the whole. This is a really. I'll say really quickly. It was a really cool story. I had kind of done the night watch on her last night, and in hospital. And then I told the family next day, look, she's going to die the next day. I just had that feeling. Went back to the hotel to sleep in the morning. And then the sliding door on this hotel balcony just opened up, this big metal sliding door. And I was about to lie down. I thought, okay, someone's come in. I felt this energy come over me. Called my sister and said, take me back to the hospital. And I couldn't move. My heart felt fantastic, but I couldn't move. The upshot was my sister kind of shepherded me, drove me back, took me to the hospital. I had to look straight ahead. If I looked left or right, I would have been sick. Got into the room. Within a minute, my mum died. So she guided me back to her room.
Wow.
And we had not gotten on that well in the last few years of her life, but it was always a spiritual connection. After she died, for probably the next 6 months, she would occasionally come back into my body. And like, I'm a channel for Reiki, I know, but this was different. And I knew it was her, and she was looking through me, and it felt really good, but it was like too good. I couldn't take it, and I couldn't move. So often I'd have clients, and I have to say, Mum, out, get out, get out, get out, because I was paralyzed. And that was so bizarre. And eventually, it's funny, there's two massive butterflies just outside the window now. So eventually she kind of settled into my field. And so my mother actually became one of my spirit guides after she died. Go figure.
That's amazing. And how synchronistic, as we said before, look for signs, synchronicities, animals, butterflies, transcending that physical caterpillar 3D reality into the spiritual world.
Beautiful.
Oh, and that's a beautiful sign for you and also for the audience. Yeah. Well, I just want to say big thank you to you guys for coming on today and for doing this show together with me. It's so much fun. And I just quickly was looking up, just as we were sort of finishing up, I was reminded of a dream that I had, I think it was last week. And I was trying to look for a picture to show you guys. This is probably as close as this little silver fox that we've got here, if it comes up. I had a dream with a silver fox in it, but it was almost crystalline. So it was like crystalline with this like auric glow. So when animals or beings stand out in your dreams, a lot of the time it is also your guide showing up. So this is a little bit of homework for me to tap into the beautiful smoky fox and to find out a bit more information. It was funny, smoky eye makeup came up when I was trying to find it. So I just want to remind you guys, if you want to book a session with Phil, we have his bookings on his Substack. So please head on over to there. There's Reiki, there's tarot, there's coaching, and all sorts of things that he has on there. And Greg's is on the Astral Travel page that we've got up here, and you will see his courses and events. You will also see much more information around that, as well as you also have your bookings as well. Oh, and I forgot to mention, please check out with Phil's Substack, the new blogs that he's also writing too. But yeah, you guys can come over here and have a look for Reiki as well, that Greg has here. And I also have the Learn How to Read Auras or How to See Auras course that's been a great success and so exciting for seeing so many people being activated and having beautiful supernatural experiences and developing their psychic gifts, which are innate that we all have. And I have sessions available on masonjupiter.com. And we also have my potions. So many different ways to connect, but we do really appreciate you guys giving us the thumbs up. And I just saw Lisa saying, I'm referring to the silver fox. There must have been some joke that I missed. But I was also giggling in how they talk about men becoming a silver fox as they get older. I was wondering if there was some kind of connection with that in the dream. But yeah, it was like a smoky quartz type color. So it was sort of smoky silvery. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming to our show and for our gorgeous audience. So lovely to have you here and such a fun way for all of us to spend the weekend together. And happy Valentine's Day to you guys and also to our Soul Tribe.
Thank you so much for having me, Sol. And And thank you to the wonderful audience. It's always a pleasure to connect with everyone here. And I'm very grateful for you hosting the show, Sol. You're just so lovely. And thank you so much.
Thank you. And I forgot to say, don't forget to mark the notification button on this for our show next week. The little sign's blocking it, but it is a show on telepathy. So if you want to hear more about telepathy, this is something we're going to have so much fun exploring. We're going to talk about our experiences with telepathy. Phil and I have already done the telepathy tape show. This is just going to be a different dynamic, and it's also going to be tips and tools on how you guys can activate your telepathy too, because this is something that we are going to be using going deeper into this age of Aquarius. But I will see you guys next week. Have a beautiful rest of the weekend and take care, everyone.
Thanks, guys. See you.